It's a horrible look. It is a terrible look. It is not at all what you want to happen or talk about during the football season, and especially as you're getting ready to take on SEC play. I know they're playing Kentucky, and I know Kentucky seems not to be anybody because they lost to South Carolina, and it wasn't close last week, but this is the 8th player on the roster who has been arrested for driving-related charges. And yeah, he was all right. Everything's okay. Doing 106 in a 2018 Jeep Cherokee. 41 miles an hour over the limit. And I think a lot of us are having the same question, like, why? Like, Kirby, take their keys. Make them ride the bus. Something. I mean, you got Jake Olson, friend of the show, by the way, making jokes about, if he was long snapping for Georgia, he could drive. For those of you who don't know, Jake is blind. He's also a scary judge of talent because that was the first dude to say that J.D. Pickle might have something, his homie. But I'm telling you, this has got to, I say it's got to stop, but it doesn't feel like it. It feels like Georgia's juggernaut. It feels like Georgia's going to just march all the way to the SEC championship game, and then we'll see if anybody's got something for them. And even if they do, I have a hard time not seeing Georgia play in the college football playoff. Like, I'm dead ass. Like, they'd have to lose to one of these FCS opponents in a bad way for people to think less of Georgia. And even then, if it's only the one loss, they might say, hey, they just didn't have it that one game. You'd have to get 2 losses or more out of Georgia, and I just don't see that happening. They are monsters. I mean, and you know what? Nobody has been bigger than this football team. And that's the other reason why I'm going, why are you playing with your future like this? All right? So it doesn't make much sense for a sophomore like Daniel Harris to take this sort of a risk. The reason it doesn't make that much sense, particularly at Georgia, is they got 5 more of you, dog. Like, that's the scheme. That's what they do at Georgia. They rotate in 5-star after 5-star after 5-star. So everybody's fresh all the way down. Now, on the one hand, RG, keep taking away players, they're not going to be fresh all the way down. You know what? You're right. Still, if I got a better Jimmy than you got a Joe, I'll just play him a couple more snaps. And, in this instance, like, Mykel Williams might not get to, like, 10 sacks this season. Maybe he will. Maybe he won't. I don't know. It's more like if I needed to play Mykel Williams all day, he could probably get 18, 19, 20. Probably get at least 20 tackles for loss. That's for damn sure. Coming off the edge. They just got dudes like that. And I think if nothing else, this is just embarrassing if you are a Georgia fan. And it's embarrassing if you root for the program because, I think Kirby is doing what he said he was going to do. The quote he gave earlier this year is, if people go to say, well, it falls on deaf ears, you got to have discipline, you got to discipline someone. Well, we have, and we will continue to do so. If the actions require that, we'll do what's necessary. But I do think the effective way in curtailing some things is when you go to their wallet and you find them because, well, these fines have been substantial and it'll make you think twice about the mistakes you make. So he's saying, go to people's pocketbooks and they'll stop doing what you're asking, what is getting them in trouble. And I'm going, to some degree, I think that's right. I think monetary incentives are how the world works. One of the reasons that I know this is how the world works is University of Tulsa and University of Nebraska both had their best GPAs from their football programs ever. And I don't think that's a coincidence as you're paying kids to have good grades, right? Is it at Georgia, we got to pay dudes to not get in trouble? I don't know. Because at this point, does it feel like it's going to affect their football team and their performance? I don't know, right? But it doesn't feel that way. It feels like the only thing that's going to stop Georgia is Georgia. And Georgia is capable of stopping Georgia. I just don't see it happening for them, given what we know about this program, given what we know about what they've been able to do, particularly defensively. But again, this is a program that sacked Trevor Etienne for a driving-related charge against what was the number 14 team in the country in Clemson, and they stopped them cold. Clemson looked like a lesser football team than Georgia, and it's true. The problem with that is it's not a lesser football team than most everybody else. Like they went to Appalachia State and they dropped 66 on their skull. It's there are levels to this. And even now, we're seeing the division. We're seeing Georgia, Texas, Ohio State. We feel like those three programs, really good. Wouldn't shock anybody to see all four of those programs in the playoff. And because you can only have one automatic qualifying bid, you're looking at perhaps Texas in that 5 spot hosting a 12, right? Which might be Texas State. It might be Memphis. There's a number of group of 5 programs we think are going to slide into that number 12 spot, right? However, I'm also looking around and I'm going, you want to have your team focused during the season. Like, it's one thing for these things to be going on in the offseason, and you can cut people, meaning push them into the transfer portal. You can go get people out of the transfer portal, and there is no small amount of people that want to come to Georgia to play football, and Kirby Smart knows this. However, you got dudes like this, you got to start doing something, I think. And I'm sure that there's a lot of other things that I'm not thinking about that Kirby Smart could do and probably will do in as far as reading his players the riot act on these cars. But all I got right now is I don't know how you take keys away from an 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 20-year-old, a legal adult, right? Because once you get to be 16 in most states, you can drive, right? Like, you can get a license. Can you take their license? I think there's laws against that too. What I'm saying is there's only so much that Kirby Smart can do. And what I think many people want him to do, if they are not Georgia fans, is reprimand the players and don't let them play. Well, he did that with Trevor Etienne. He did that. People wanted that to happen with Ollie Gordon. Mike Gundy said, no, he's going to play. But he's also facing consequences that are outside of his control and mine, right? He's going through the justice system. And anybody that's gone through it knows it sucks. Like, it ain't fun. The reason to avoid being arrested is because of all the other stuff that comes with being arrested. It sucks, right? There's no short way of saying that, or no shorter way of saying that. It's just awful. But I'm also looking at a Georgia football program that seems to be doing what is necessary to compete, right? I mean, this went from being a program that we all thought should be one of the best programs in all of college football, given what the state of Georgia produces from a high school talent standpoint and given how much the state of Georgia loves Georgia football. But it took 41 years for them to win their first national championship, and then they doubled it up just that quickly. They went back-to-back. And the reason they didn't go back-to-back last year is because they happened to drop the game, the SEC championship, to Alabama, and had Georgia been in that spot, maybe Georgia beats Michigan. Maybe we're talking about Georgia playing against Washington in the national championship game and perhaps being the first modern three-peat. But now they got to start all over, and you know what? None of us are like, they started out this year. They didn't make the college football playoff. They start this year at number 1, and nobody is really upset about it. Like, I had Ohio State at 1, and then Georgia stomped the mud hole in Clemson and walked it dry, and I'm like, yep, flip those, because that program has demonstrated not only can it get to the mountaintop, it knows how to finish there, right? The reason I think that Ohio State is a worthy 2 there, if you want to put them there, is they pushed Georgia to the brink in that national title game, or excuse me, in that college football playoff game that ended up being Georgia stomping a mud hole in Texas Christian for the national championship. But then Texas got a top 10 win against a Michigan team that doesn't feel like a top 10 team, but you put them there because they're defending national champions, and then, they got stomped at home. It's just a bad look all the way around, and I would really like it if we could have a honest conversation about just what the culture is around cars there, because it seems to be isolated, which is interesting. But, nobody wants to see this because this is the best case scenario. He got pulled over. He got arrested. He was bailed out, right? I think it was $50 on bond. But the worst case scenario is Devin Willock and Chandler LaCroix. You know what the worst case scenario is. People died. Nobody wants that. Everybody wants everybody at Georgia to be okay and be taken care of. But I need the players themselves to take some measure of responsibility for this and put an end to it, because nobody wants another tragedy to happen, especially as we're playing ball, guys. Like, play ball. Focus on playing ball. Walk to class. You ride a bike. Get your steps in. Whatever it is that you got to tell yourself to not be stupid in a car. Don't drive drunk. Don't go racing on legal streets. You want to race, go to the track, wear a helmet, wear a fire suit, all those things. Don't do it out here. Every car is fast. EVs are fastest. Don't be stupid in a car. Please. We're begging you. Please. We want to talk about football, not you being arrested.